Let's call this regular council meeting of May 12th to order. And the first thing that I'm going to do is go into a public hearing for 500 Townley Street.
And I'll recuse myself and make the solicitor my privilege.
Very good. So we are having a public hearing on OCP Amendment Bylaw number 2072, Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 2073, and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 2074. So these three items, but it's all to do with one piece of property at 500 Townley Street. And Mr. Strachan, if you wouldn't mind, actually I probably should read this here first, is that the public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 890 of the Local Government Act. This public hearing, the public will be allowed to make representations to council, and all persons present who believe that their interests are affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Those who wish to speak concerning this proposed bylaw should commence your address to the council and meeting by clearly stating your name and address, and then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. I have a speakers list that people can sign up, but I will be going out and asking for comments from the public after I go through the speakers list. And Mr. Strachan is now going to explain to council and the public what this this public hearing is about.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very briefly, it's a, as noted, an OCP amendment application, as well as a rezoning application, and also to amend the zoning bylaw to include vacation rentals and allowable use in the RR 0.4 district. The application is to allow for this property to be subdivided into 9 lots, and the provision of that subdivision would be that this subdivision would be a strata subdivision. Your Worship, it was noted that there was not any written submissions received in advance of the public hearing. However, the Advisory Planning Commission provided a supporting recommendation with one request to council, and that is their consideration of the public walking and cycling trail be included as an approval condition. And this is the trail that's shown here, extending along the base of the property. The exact location of that trail has not been established. It would need to be engineered and reviewed. However, the APC has requested that that be one of the conditions for final approval. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Strachan. So going to the speakers list, we have Mr. Bill Black has indicated he'd like to speak.
Only if there's questions to be answered.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Is there any members of the public that would like to speak to this public hearing on 500 Townley Street? Any comments a second time on the public hearing for 500 Townley Street? This is an OCP amendment bylaw, zoning amendment bylaw, and another zoning amendment bylaw number 2074. 500 Townley Street. Asking for a third and final time if there's any comments from the public. Are there any other questions or comments from staff or from council? Councilor Nixon?
Your Worship, can we just put forward the request from APC that the public walking cycling trail as an approved condition?
What will happen is that Mr. Strachan will be taking this recommendation and any comments that come up today, and it'll be part of the final submission that comes to council. Is it?
That's correct, Your Worship. It will come forward as a report summary with a recommendation to council for consideration for third reading.
Any comments on this public hearing for 500 Townley Street? Seeing none, I close this public hearing. Thank you. And we're going to go right into our regular council meeting. Sorry? Item 3 on the agenda is the announcements from the mayor, and the only thing that I would like to talk about today is the sewage lagoon and the way that it's working and not working. As council, and I'm sure most of the public know, that we've gone through quite a process to find out what the problems are with the sewage lagoon. We've come up with a plan. We've done the design work. We've brought in the equipment. We put it out for tender. Happy to say that Canyon Industrial Electric was our local low bidder and is on the job as we speak. Because of the work that's going on, the building is torn apart a little bit. We figure that is the main reason why there is odors coming from the sewage lagoon. There's been a somewhat of a small delay getting equipment on site, which has pushed the project completion date by a week, but we're still within our original target, and we're hoping that June 15th, we'll see the sewage lagoon project finished, and fingers crossed, everything should be as normal as they should be, or they're supposed to be, and I'm hoping that this will put an end to the odors from the sewage lagoon. So June 15th, we're hoping will be the final date. So I actually would like to apologize to the neighborhood in the south side area, because I was down there this morning. And it's unfortunate, but we have been going through a process and doing it as quickly as possible. And it is our timelines that we're still meeting. The warmer weather does exacerbate the sewage lagoon problem. And again, we're hoping June 15th will put an end to it once and for all. Anybody want to talk about sewage? Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor English, Councillor Orlando, all those in favor? Motion is carried. And I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 28th. Councillor Nixon, Councillor Souls, all those in favor? And is there any business arising from those minutes of April the 28th? Hearing none, we have one delegation today. Dr. Battersby biked all the way here to talk to us about Bike to Work Week. Geoff, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for this opportunity to talk to you about Bike to Work Week 2015 in Revelstoke, which will be held between May the 25th and May the 31st, the last week of the month. Revelstoke only joined the Bike to Work Week celebrations in 2009. Since that time, over 2,525 Revelstoke participants have biked a total of 60,700 kilometers, with an intended reduction of 14 tons of greenhouse gases and saving of $3,100 that would have been spent on gasoline. 558 of these cyclists were first-timers. In 2014, Revelstoke biked 16,300 kilometers in Bike to Work Week. Our purpose today is to raise awareness and get Revelsokans involved in enjoying the many benefits of cycling. It's good for your physical, social, and mental health. It's the most cost-effective form of transportation you can experience. And it's good for the environment with associated greenhouse gas reductions. And safe biking practices are stressed throughout this week as well. The goal is to have people take up biking as their usual means of transport. Be that for shopping, going to the post office, or just going out to get some exercise. There are many ways to participate in Bike to Work Week. Note that each team needs to have a team leader. You can either start or join a team at your workplace, your church, or some other organization. You can start or join a team of fellow retirees, fellow seniors, or some neighbors. You can register online as a solo participant, as a team of one. And you can get your employer to encourage others to get involved. There's some new twists to Bike to Work Week in Revelstoke this year. We're using coffee mugs that you've all received as gifts. It's the committee's pleasure to have provided those to everyone on council. We have, I think, we've got over 100 of those mugs, and they'll be distributed to many of the participants in this year's Bike to Work week through random draw of names of the participants. The There'll be more celebration stations this year than locally with longer time frames. Bike to School is also being formalized as part of the celebrations. On the committee's behalf, Mayor McKee has issued a challenge to Smithers whereby the community with the largest total number of bikers times the number of kilometers cycled will prevail as victors. So we haven't had a response from Smithers yet, but they're having a council meeting today, and we have every understanding that that will be approved. They will accept the challenge. So we look forward to that as adding another dimension to these activities. And now Andrew Moore, first Bike to Work Week in 2013. Andrew's at the back here, and he is a perfect example of what we like Bike to Work Week to do for someone. He had done some cycling before that, but became really enthused about cycling after that involvement, and he really turned his lifestyle around into many good things, fit and healthy things. That's what we like to see happen with lots of people in terms of taking advantage of Bike to Work Week. Last year, Andrew rode to work from Edmonton to Revelstoke in the 1 week, and he has promised to put up $500 in prize money if the community rides over 20,000 kilometers this year, and he will ride his Arctic Challenge from Nunavut to Dawson City in 2016 if we exceed that 20,000 kilometer goal. So I'm sure that you'll be pleased to know that volunteers and many corporate sponsorships are making all this happen without input of Revelstoke taxpayers' dollars. Always good news for council. We know that council want to be role models here for the rest of the community, so we expect that there will be a team from council entered into the events of that last week of May. Please spread the word and watch out, Smithers. We're coming. Revelstoke's coming. For further information, you can contact Susan Grieve or Chris Elvig in city in their positions with the city. There's also the Bike to Work Week Revelstoke that has more information, more detailed information, and it can also be followed on Facebook. So thank you again for this opportunity, and enjoy your coffee and your mugs, and we look forward to seeing you out cycling. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Any questions, anybody? No? Yes.
I'll just say, the radio station's done this program, I kind of rolled down the hill for Bike to Work Week from my house, but it's tough on the way back up. We've done it every year, it's awesome, so I just say people get involved with it, it's really good, and it's good exercise. It reminds you how you can use your bike throughout town for pretty much everything.
Thank you.
And of course, when I issued the challenge to Smithers, I told them that I was going to do a mayor and former mayor Bike to Work Week team, and as soon as they heard that Geoff was on my team, then that really, I'm not sure they're going to take us up on the challenge now. I've got them shaking in their boots up there.
Thank you.
Anyways, thanks very much. Looking forward to the results.
Thank you.
One item of old business, and this has to do with the Revelstoke Community Housing Society, the Oscar Street project, and there is a recommendation here, and what this has to do with is that the Housing Society put up a bond for landscaping last year, and as this is a city project and we are trying to balance our budget for the housing project as much as possible, there's a recommendation here for council to release that bond, allow it to go back to the Housing Society and become part of its budget for the, hopefully, the affordable housing project that is coming. I need a motion. Councilor Brothers, Councilor Sauls, motion is to release that funds back to the society for the landscaping bond. Is there any discussion on the motion? This is not a cost to taxpayers, it's money that this housing society put up previously. All those in favor? Motion's carried, thank you. Item of new business, finance.
Yes, your worship, I'll bring this forward, that the city's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2014 be approved as presented.
Motion by Councilor Nixon, seconded by Councilor Duke. Discussion, Councillor Nixon.
Just a comment, I was part of the council that carried out the 2014 budget. I'm proud of the team of council and staff that decreased the debt, decreased operating costs, increased assets, increased reserves. All programs came in under budget, except for economic development, which is a good thing because that was more grants coming in from other levels of government. So all in all, a good report, and kudos to you, Mr. Inglis, for your leadership on that budget.
Any more comments from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Administration.
I need to do your presentation on that.
Which is here, if there are any questions, Your Worship. If there are any questions from council?
Okay, let's get the motion on the floor and,
Oh, it's for the
Well,
town.
that's-
oh, sorry.
Sorry?
Ask if there's any question on the,
Previous one.
2014 financial statements, the auditors here.
I think they're gonna do a presentation on it, right? Is that-
I'm just gonna speak with you then.
Okay,
That's,
sure.
yes, sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay. Yep, please.
Your Worship and Council, my name is Andrew Spencer. I work with BDO, we're the auditors. And I'm just going to walk a very high level through the audited financial statements. So this will be the consolidated financial statements for 2014 that you all have. So I'll start on page 3. Page 3 is our independent audit report. This confirms management's responsibility, confirms our independence as auditors, and the final paragraph issues our opinion, which is a clean, unqualified audit opinion, meaning that we did not find any material misstatements when conducting our audit this year. Over to page 4, this is your statement of financial position. Really, there's, I'll just talk to the high-level variances over the year. Cash and cash equivalents, fairly consistent with last year, down slightly, and that's due to some of your capital purchases and also an increase in your portfolio investments. You invested about $1 million in credit union this year, in money market funds. On to your liabilities. Liabilities have decreased this year. That's largely due to last year there was some payables related to the new visitor center that were outstanding that have been paid off during the year. Deferred revenue and obligations are fairly consistent. I will mention deferred revenue has gone down. This is an accounting issue that came up for related to the gas tax. So the underlying gas tax agreements did change this year that no longer constitute the need for the city to be deferring those and recognize them against specific costs. So that's why when you flip the page to page 5, you'll see quite a large spike in your government grants. That's just recognizing grants money or gas tax revenue that had previously been deferred, okay? And that also had an impact overall on your annual surplus. Still on page 4, your tangible capital assets, that has increased with increased assets purchased during the year in the visitor center, which was about $600,000 of costs that were capitalized, and that was offset by amortization. Over the page to page 5, in your statement of operations, this is a summary of your revenues and expenditures for the years. Taxation has increased this year. That was in line with what you budgeted and your increase in tax rates, about 2%. I mentioned government grants largely being due to some additional funding received this year, and then the gas tax that was recognized. So that's gone up quite substantially. Your user fee and service charges increased slightly due to the increase in water rates this year. And then overall, for expenditures, as you mentioned, that you are very consistent with previous year and below budget in many cases. Some of that was due to projects that weren't taken on this year, with the exception, of course, of economic development services, which was increased over last year. So overall, your annual surplus, this is, for accounting purposes, was 4.9 million. Like I said, a lot of that is to do with, there was about $2.1 million of previously deferred gas tax that was recognized this year. And about $1 million of expenditures that you were under budget this year, which contributed to that surplus over what you had budgeted for. The following pages really are, there's a statement of cash flow which illustrates the changes in more detail in cash. That's on page 7. And then the subsequent pages are the notes to the financial statements. These highlight what accounting policies the city follows and provide more detail to the numbers within the core financials that I've gone through. So if there's any questions on any of the financial statement items, you can look to the note to find a bit more detail, or of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on the audit or on the financial statements as a whole.
Any questions from council? I guess not. Everybody's happy.
Thank you,
Thanks very
Tanya,
much.
and Graham and all of your team for all their help during the audit. Thanks.
Thank you. Nine B. So the bylaw 2075, we need a motion and a second for that. Council Brothers, do you want to do that?
That bylaw number 2075 being a bylaw for the purpose of adopting the 2015 to 2019 financial plan receive first, second, and third readings. Is that clear?
Yes.
And that the letter from Mr. Weston dated April 30, 2015 be referred to 2016 budget discussion.
Motion by Council Brothers, seconded by Councilor English. Discussion on the motion? Council Brothers?
The only thing that I'd like to point out is the letter from Mr. Weston, and I just want to emphasize that the appreciation, at least from my perspective, of Mr. Weston weighing in on some of these issues and taking the time and the energy to do so. And I want to make sure that it's clear that we are going to have our financial committee again, and that I'm hopeful that we have Mr. Weston participate in that financial committee and give us input as he's done in this letter. Because I've heard from other people who have been on the committee before that there was some disillusionment or discouragement about being on the committee, and because they were concerned that we wouldn't take it into consideration or take their comments into consideration. So I think Mr. Weston has pointed out here that, as one of the things that he's interested in is seeing that there be a response to that committee and whatever the committee requires. And so I just like to point that out and make sure that at least from my perspective, that we follow through with that. And again, I want to make sure that everybody understands that if they are going to come on to the committee, and we're hopeful that everybody will participate, and if they're interested in it, that they know that this council will respond to, give them a mandate and respond to them in due course.
Councilor Nixon.
Just to take the opportunity to reassure the public that some of the capital projects that they see in the 5-year plan are pushed out to 2016 and beyond, and that's so the council can have a proper look at what's going on with those projects. And one of them is the siding issue for the City Hall and the cladding option. There are at least 3 options that council will be looking at, and the Heritage Commission will be weighing in on that. And not likely that cladding will be the choice of this council or city.
Oh,
Not likely.
okay. Just think, you're a sighting expert now.
Yeah. I'm the financial chair.
Councilor Nixon chipping off the
Yes, it's stucco.
stucco off the side of the building. Any more comments or questions on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Fees and charges amendment by law. Sorry, did I miss one? Oh, sorry, property tax rate by number 2076.
Yes, I move that bylaw number 2076, being a bylaw for the purpose of adopting the tax rates for the year 2015, receive first, second, and third readings.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Salz. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Orlando?
Yeah, I guess that my main comment is I'm happy to see the business and residential taxes moving in the right direction. It's not a great, huge step, but it's a step in the right direction. I'd like to see personally over 4 years us work on this one, but just in terms of the numbers, that's something I'm happy to see.
Councillor Nixon?
I'd just like to see this council look next at light industry, manufacturing businesses in town. And certainly Class 6 has been helped out this budget go around. And I think we need to look at the Class 5 and how we can help them next year's budget.
Any more discussion or comments on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Now we're on fees and charges of amendment bylaw number 2077. Councillor Brothers.
That bylaw number 2077 being a bylaw for the purpose of adopting amendments to municipal fees and charges receive first, second, and third readings.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by somebody, Councillor English. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Brothers?
Couple of questions. How do we arrive at these fees? Do we just look at the fees that we did last year and tack on something new, or do we look at whether we have a cost return, or how do we do it?
So it's a combination of all those things, really. Looking at where our fees and charges have been in the past, there's an inflationary increase. Fees and charges to the cemetery, for example, a lot of work was done on that a few years ago, and a program of increases was committed, which is included in the fees and charges bylaw. And then we do look at our fees in relation to what our costs are in providing that service, and try and get a feel for what those fees should be in order to have cost recovery. We can't make profit on our fees, we can only cost recovery. And part of it also is looking at municipalities too, and seeing what they're charging for similar services. So it's a combination of those things. It's being charged.
Okay, because the only comment I'd like to make is I'd like to see in our respective committees that we take a look at these fees to a certain extent and review them to assist you, Graham, as well, from the committee perspective and the department perspective, so we can see whether or not, you know, there's a reason, you know, to increase them, or you know, can we be more cost effective in that type of thing.
More discussion on this motion?
Oh, one more question. Sorry.
Okay, but this is it.
Do we actually collect these fees? I mean, or yeah, that's the question.
Do we? Yes.
On a daily basis?
So all the fees are collected, fines and that type of thing?
Yes, if that's what gives us the authority to collect those fees.
Any more questions or comments on this motion? Even from Councillor Brothers is allowed to ask another question if she would like. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Purchasing tendering policy A14. Councillor Brothers, you want to do this? You want to do it?
So this is sorry, there we go, let's move over. That purchasing and tendering, I move that purchasing and tendering policy A14 be amended to reflect the current purchasing guidelines and authorizations.
Motion by Councillor Orlando, seconded by Councillor Salz. Discussion? Councillor Duke.
I have a similar question to what Councillor Brothers had in the last one. Did this stuff come to a committee, or does this just get put forward to council at this table now?
Your Worship, this was certainly vetted through management. It go to a specific committee. It is an amendment of a policy that was developed, I think, way back in 2002 from a variety of purchasing and tendering policies that were collected from other municipalities, and we synthesized all that and built our own purchasing and tendering policy, which we didn't have before. So it's then gone through a revision, I think, in 2008. This is the current iteration.
But a lot of the changes that were put in here was because of the trade investment agreement between the provinces.
The TILMA, certainly, yeah, that's right, trade investment and mobility agreement, which came into effect about 2006, 2007, just shortly before the last amendment to this purchasing and tendering policy. And so in there is a language referring to preferential treatment to local businesses who can scratch down the GC units, because that's not consistent with TILMA. And we should have made that adjustment way back in 2008 and it got overlooked. And so it's just some housekeeping now. We've been following TILMA since 2006, in fact. But our policy has been following TILMA during that time.
Councilor Rivers.
And can I just ask, it's just my lack of knowledge, why is the amount for tendering of $100,000, why is that limit going up and we're doubling it?
Probably because it has been reviewed for so many years, and it's just the scope has changed. When was the last time that policy was, when was that figure put in the first time?
2002.
2002, so it's 13 years ago. Yeah.
It's just, Your Worship, if I may just add, that's just, council can choose whatever limits it wants, and these are just suggested limits, so that staff can work as efficiently as possible without
Councilor Duke.
The doubling of the figure is I'm not comfortable with, but I'm also, just so you can explain to me so we know and some of the other councillors around the table know if they don't already. If a department head, it has their limits, and it's in this policy here. So the department head now has a limit to spend $100,000. If they were to spend, say, something was $95,000, how does that, what does that look like going through the system? Does that come to you for authorization of it at some point, the CEO, or, because what I'm concerned about is that we have each department head, and I know they're responsible, but there's not enough checks and balances for spending.
So Your Worship, if I can just speak a little bit, the primary authorisation for spending is the financial plan, which is set by council. So those budgets are set by council. We've just done it today, at least the first 3 readings. So management now has its spending limits. What we're talking about here in this purchasing and tendering policy is simply the authorisation levels. It's internal audit controls, if you like. What are the authorisation levels that a manager can sign off on an invoice that's already in the budget before it can get paid? And so if it exceeds the manager's level, then it will come to me. If it exceeds mine, it goes to the CAO. So there's checks and balances all the way along the line in terms of how those invoices and those costs are approved and paid. And the auditors would be particularly interested in seeing that there's those internal controls there. And some of the, I think the limits have been increased in terms for tendering as well.
Councilor Rivers.
And just on that same point, through the chair, Graham, if the department head is allowed to spend $50,000 and they spend $50,000, does it then go to you
Your Worship,
for a second sort of review?
So, Your Worship, all the invoices, all the invoices that come into the city through normal means, i.e. the mail, come to me. So I see all the invoices when they come in. I see all the invoices when they go out. So when they're then distributed to all department heads for approval, we then redistribute to subordinates that have spending authority. So it gets signed by a number of different people, and then it comes back to me. And before the check goes out, I get another opportunity to look at the invoice.
And if it's a big check, then I have to sign it too.
Yes.
And again, it's no reflection on the department heads. I just wanted to see whether or not there's a second person looking at it as, you know, it's just a good thing to have 2 heads.
I think that one of the items in here that raised a little anxiety with the local community was taking out the 5% preference for local contractors and suppliers, and I looked at it and realizing that in this day and age, having a 5% bonus to local suppliers is not in the best interest of all taxpayers. And, but I think that also local suppliers have a distinct advantage to supply goods and services to the city. I think it's incumbent on the city that if there is a local supplier that can supply the goods to the city, then it's incumbent on the city to make sure that that company is included in the bid process. They are not automatically given that business a green light to supply goods and services. They have to bid on it and have to be treated fairly. But by taking this out, also ensures that when people from out of town want to bid, they know that their bid is being treated properly and fairly and is going to be in the game. So I think that this is the right way to go. I think there's some good questions here. Again, council is in full control of the budget. We have measures in place to watch the spending, the tendering process, and how things get paid. And I think that all we're trying to do is make sure that everybody is protected, and that's staff, council, and our suppliers. And that's all that what I see this is cleaning up the process, making it open and transparent, and making it fair, and offering and trying to attain the best deal for the taxpayers, which is what everybody sitting around this table in this room, that's what we want. Is there any more questions? Councilor Orlando. Councilor, did you have your hand up earlier?
No, I've asked my question, thank you.
Councilor Orlando.
Yeah, Graham touched on it, Mr. Ingles touched on it a second ago, the Trades Investment Labor and Mobility Act from 2009-ish is basically removed interprovincial barriers for suppliers, and that's a concern, I think, for a city like ours that's close to the Alberta border, because somebody who's bidding on a contract might have a whole different playing field if their company is based in Alberta. However, it's the law, it's come in, so when you see the local preferences thing, and I don't think we can do that anymore, at least that's the advice coming from staff, you just can't have that anymore, and there's upsides and downsides to that. The upside might be we get lower cost services, the downside might be it's harder for a BC company to compete, but it is what it is, and that's not our call. And I do appreciate the comments from the councillors on maybe thinking about thresholds where we're going to put those dollar values. A lot of it, however, from my look at it, is housekeeping, trying to just get out the case.
Councilor Burns.
Just following up on your point, your worship, about making sure that local businesses have an opportunity to bid or on the business. Is it something that we should consider putting in our policy, just as sort of an indication to businesses, local businesses, that we want to make sure that they get every opportunity? Or does that go outside the?
Well, I'm concerned that you're going to handcuff the process too much. It's up to both staff and the business community that both parties recognize and understand what goods and services are available, what they can get, and sometimes a business gets added or a business adds a product line that we may not be aware of. So if they get missed, then we have a policy that could complicate all kinds of things. That's what I'm concerned about. I think there should be a good enough rapport between the business community and the staff at City Hall so that they're well aware of everything that they provide. And I think it's incumbent also on a new business to let the city know, hey, I want to get in on your tendering process, and these are the goods and services that I can provide. So I see it kind of as a two-way street, and I just would encourage staff that every opportunity that we have to go out to tender on anything, we should be making sure that if there's a supplier in town, we should be allowing them in that bidding process.
Maybe the Chamber of Commerce can provide the city staff with better information on what businesses are around and what they do provide. Because I know it's an issue within the Economic Development Committee as to making sure that people know, the regular people in town know what businesses can do in the city.
Ms. Levesque.
chamber should be monitoring all the bid opportunities for the city.
And I think they do. But I think that the comments are good and they're valid, and I think that staff are going to take those under advisement and make sure that we're including as many local businesses as possible. Is there any more comments or questions on this, what is this thing? Purchasing and tendering policy A14 amendments. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Public nuisance bylaw.
Sure. I move that staff be directed to develop a public nuisance bylaw as recommended by the Security Committee.
Motion by Councillor Lando, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. I'll let Councillor Lando go first since you made the motion. You want to have Councillor English go first?
Thank you, Councillor Lando. I think this is, I've been sitting on the Security Committee. I think that this is a great bylaw coming forward, very similar to other resort municipalities' bylaws through the winter and other months. We're housing people in our RCMP building, and we do budget to house them overnight sometimes, and we don't see any revenue from it. What this public nuisance bylaw does is develops an opportunity for us to issue a fine that is paid to the city rather than the province, which will help offset some of our costs at the RCMP holding. I fully support this bylaw. I think it's a great step forward for the community.
Councillor Lando?
Yeah, I support it too. I agree with everything that Councillor English said. This is one of the first requests we had from the RCMP. Basically, we're trying to get a better handle on the late night rowdiness from 2 a.m. to 3:30 in the morning, which can be disruptive. And they're looking for better tools, and this is what they've recommended. And we'll have to see what they propose.
Councillor English, did I see in here that there's an exemption for 40-year-old birthday parties? Is that did I see that in here someplace?
No, you didn't say that.
Any more questions or comments on this public nuisance bylaw? All those in favor? Motion's carried. I don't know why I said your name with that, Councillor English. I don't want anybody to take anything out of that. There's nothing to read in there. Development, food, primary entertainment endorsement.
Yes, I will leave this.
Councillor Duke.
The application to allow food primary entertainment endorsement at the Revelstoke Mountain Resort Revelation Lodge located at 5620 Mountain Road be approved for the following reasons highlighted in the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. And we're going to get a presentation, Mr. Solvig?
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located at 5620 Mountain Road, and as stated by Councillor Duke, the applicant has applied for a liquor application to allow a food primary entertainment endorsement within the dining hall area of the Revelstoke Mountain Resort Revelation Lodge. The endorsement would enable the hosting of weddings and other social events that would include patrons dancing to live music and DJs. Given that the building is over 400 meters from the closest residential subdivision, it is not anticipated that there will be a significant impact on the neighborhood or community if this application is approved. The proposed changes are seen as an important step to supporting the four-season use of the Revelstoke Mountain Resort and providing a service that is in demand within the city of Revelstoke. Staff recommendation is for approval. There's the dining hall area, outlined in red there.
Questions or comments from council?
I was just wondering, the beer hall's on this side now, is that,
Yeah, it's
that
on
the change?
the left
I
side.
didn't know that over the left, and you just want to extend it there, okay.
Councilor English.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to clarify, birthday parties will be okay.
Yeah. Well, exemption coming up for 41-year-old birthday parties now. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, there's a second piece to this too, so I will move that council endorses staff comments and the prescribed considerations included in section 6.1 of this report, and that the views of the residents were solicited via newspaper, advertisements placed in 2 consecutive editions of the local newspaper, and a public information meeting held at April 14th, which it seems that there was no attendance to these comments received.
Moved by Councilor Duke, second by Councilor Nixon. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Heritage alteration permit application.
I move that heritage alteration permit application submitted by Class and Maxine Rings for property lot 79, plan 636, 106 6th Street West, to rebuild an existing front porch and veranda be approved subject to the following conditions. The construction drawing, materials lists, and photos are to be included with the heritage alteration permit as Schedule A, and the corporate officer be authorized to issue the heritage alteration permit once the above noted condition has been satisfied.
Moved by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. And Mr. Strachan, you're going to show us something?
Absolutely, Your Worship.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As noted, this is a heritage alteration permit. Heritage alteration permit applies to this specific property because it's within our heritage designation area in the OCP. The applicant has proposed to rebuild the front porch and do some exterior modifications to the building, requiring a heritage alteration permit. The heritage alteration permit was reviewed by the Heritage Advisory Commission, and this provided a supporting recommendation. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any comments, questions from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And next.
Aye. That the heritage alteration permit application by Todd and Kristen Anthony Malone for the properties parcel A of lot 4 and lot 5, plan 636B, 209 5th Street East, to replace an existing accessory building with a new accessory building be approved subject to the following conditions. The building design, drawings, and site plan are to be included with the heritage alteration permit as Schedule A, and the corporate officer be authorized to issue the heritage alteration permit once the above noted condition has been satisfied.
So motion by Councilor Duke, second by Councilor Nixon. Mr. Strachan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very briefly. Again, this is a heritage alteration permit as a result of the subject property being located within the heritage designation area of the OCP. Excuse me, Your Worship. This one includes a alteration to the rear of the building to allow for a connecting corridor, so a covered area connecting the back of the home to a secondary building. There's an existing secondary building on the site which would be removed. It's the one you see in the top right-hand corner. It would be removed as a result of the works and replaced with a newer building to house both a garage area as well as an office and guest room facility. The building does include features that reflect on the heritage building itself, and this one was also reviewed by the Heritage Advisory Commission, who's provided a supporting recommendation. Thank you, Your Worship.
Comments from council, Council Brothers.
The only comment I'd like to make is I'm really impressed with the amount of work and energy people are putting into to improving their residences, and I think I'm hopeful that it's a reflection on the faith that they have in the city and the health of the city. But I'm very pleased and impressed to see some of this stuff.
Good. Any other comments? Councilor Duke.
And just echo what Councilor Brothers has said, the Heritage Committee felt the same way when they looked at all of these reports.
Any more comments? All those in favor? Motion is carried.
Okay, J, I will move the heritage alteration permit application submitted by Quinn and Jody Castillo for the property parcel C, plan 636I, 219 7th Street East, to construct a new single-family dwelling be approved subject to the following condition. The site plan, construction drawings, elevations, and renderings are to be included with the heritage alteration permit as Schedule A, and the corporate officer be authorized to issue the heritage alteration permit once the above noted condition has been satisfied.
Moved by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Mr. Strachan.
Thank you, Your Worship. As noted, it is a heritage alteration permit. Again, this is as a result of the property being within the heritage conservation or heritage designation area. This one's a little different in the fact that the home did not appear in the registry, so it was removed from the site. They're required under the OCP to submit for a heritage alteration permit for the siting of a new building. So this is for the purpose of constructing a new building, requiring a heritage alteration permit. And what they're looking for in that particular application is the placement of the building itself in relation to the adjacent properties. Thank you, Your Worship.
Questions from council, comments? Councillor Lando.
Yeah, I just have a question, because I've always wondered this. When you're building a new home in the heritage zone, what, in general, just sort of high level discussion, what are the requirements for the heritage replacement? Because that seems to be what this is. I've never seen one of these before.
Your Worship, the requirements are based on placement and orientation only. So they don't actually relate to the home features themselves. It doesn't go that far with stating you must follow the architecture of the block or something like that. That may be because there is such a diversity in the heritage designation area. There isn't a sort of a grand development scheme that happened that created block after block of very similar architecture. There's quite an eclectic mix. Having said that, to date, and you'll see with this application, most people that have an interest in building in that type of neighborhood want to be reflective of that type of neighborhood. It's certainly something that will be considered as part of our review of that section of the OCP as to whether there's a necessity for more strength in that particular aspect. I'm a little surprised that there isn't some strength in that aspect as far as amassing the size of home, as well as some of the architectural features such as having peaked roofs versus flat roof. Thank you.
Which is one of the advantages to all the commercial core being a development permit zone, is that you can take all of these things into consideration of the streetscape. Any questions or comments on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Okay, I will move that the development variance permit application submitted by Jonathan Vignette for the property lot 2, plant 9504, 1416 3rd Street West, to vary zoning bylaw number 1264, section 5.12C, to increase the permitted projection of an open porch into the front yard setback area from 0.75 meters to 0.1 meters be approved, subject to the following conditions. The site plan elevations renderings are to be included with the development variance permit as Schedule A, and the corporate officer be authorized to issue the development variance permit once the above noted condition has been satisfied.
Moved by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Mr. Strachan.
Thank you, Your Worship. As noted, it is development variance permit. The development variance permit is related to the front porch area and an extension that they wish to have included on the front of the building. It projects into the front yard setback a small amount or a small area. However, it does require a development variance permit for approval. As noted in the report, it does present a good opportunity for improvement to aesthetics from the street view, as well as a note that the property owner is investing in the property. Thank you, Your Worship.
Questions, comments from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Motion L.
I will recuse myself on the basis that this was considered a point. Okay.
I move that the development variance permit application submitted by Kevin and Kim Coulter for the property lot 1, plan 10730, 714 Railway Avenue, to vary zoning bylaw number 1264, section 7261, to reduce the minimum required rear yard setback from 6 meters to 1.32 meters in section 5.12B, to reduce the minimum required roof overhang setback for the rear yard from 5 meters to 1.06 meters, be approved subject to the following condition. site plan, elevations, and renderings are to be included with the development variance permit as Schedule A, and the corporate officer be authorized to issue the development variance permit once the above noted condition has been satisfied.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Oh, sorry, Mr. Strachan, you're going to do the slide?
Very briefly, Your Worship. It's a development variance permit. This also includes a setback. This particular provision is for the rear yard setback. It is to allow for the extension of the kitchen on the rear of the property. The setback provision that's being sought for variance is to reduce it from 5 meters down to 1.06 meters, which is a significant reduction in setback. However, the property does have a unique layout, to say the least, and its orientation of the existing building is somewhat unusual. We did not receive any input on this variance application. Thank you, Your Worship.
Questions, comments from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Dean, would you mind letting our council back in?
All right, we're on N. And I move that the official community plan amendment application submitted by David and Martha Furr to amend the designation of Lot 1, Plan 4148, 2276 Biggity Road from the rural residential T2 to duplex residential T4L be supported to proceed with an amendment bylaw. Do you want me to do them together?
Yeah.
And that the rezoning application submitted by David and Martha Furr to rezone Lot 1, Plan 4148, 2276 Biggity Road from rural residential 1 Hector District R1 to special low-density residential district R2A be supported to proceed with a rezoning bylaw.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon, and Mr. Strachan. Do you have something to show us here too?
Your Worship. As noted, this is a large property located in the Big Eddy. The property owners have sought to do an OCP amendment for the property. The OCP amendment designation matches the existing designation on adjacent properties, as does the proposed zoning. The proposed zoning would match the properties both on the north, south, east, and west. There is an unusual boundary configuration. There is actually a strip of land that belongs to this property that runs the full length here. So there is some question that came from the CPR as far as adjacency to the railway. This property itself actually does not include adjacency to the railway. The application is in order to allow for the subdivision of the property. So they've got a large parcel. In the bottom corner of the property is an existing home. Essentially, the property owners were seeking a subdivision to sever the home from the larger parcel itself. There is a development potential for the parcel. However, it is not the current property owners' plan to move forward with that at this time. A subdivision application would be required should council approve their OCP amendment as well as their rezoning. Condition of that subdivision would be, as is noted in Figure 5, Interior Health's approval of the Big Eddy water system to allow for subdivision, similar to the requirements that came from Interior Health related to the school district site. Thank you, Your Worship.
Questions from council? I think it's worthwhile pointing out that the Interior Health comment does not support the subdivision into separate lots, but if the change in the Big Eddy water system were to happen, that their position would change, and I think that's very interesting and timely. Any more discussion comments from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Where are we now? And yes.
Motion that staff be directed to provide a letter of support in principle of the bioenergy project proposed by Emergent Waste Solutions, Inc. to develop an advanced pyrolysis system plant in Revelstoke.
Motion by Councillor Brothers, seconded by Councillor Rich. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Just the concept that they're proposing is good. Just want to make sure that our motion is that we're not supporting a
financial implications to the city. Any other comments or questions from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Garbage services.
I'll do that. I make a motion that the staff the staff bring forward changes to the recycling and garbage bylaw for consideration of limiting the number of containers for curbside pickup to 1. And that the scope for garbage services Schedule A for the request for proposals be approved.
Motion by Councillor Soul, seconded by Councillor Duke. Discussion on the motion. And, okay, Councillor Duke.
I'm just wondering, through the chair, what the thrust was to move down to 1 bin. I read through there that it's because we have recycling pickup, so there's less garbage, but has that actually been proven, or I'm wondering what the residents are going to feel like if they only take out 1 bin?
You want to answer that question? You can go ahead.
Okay. In the proposal that came forward to the Public Works Committee through Penny Page Britton and the recycling process, somewhere along the line, the regional district is looking at changing the garbage pickup to allow biodegradables and household garbage, compost, that sort of thing. So we're looking at possibly that in addition to the 1 garbage was one thought, but also by allowing one container, I think it's a 77 liter, Darren. Garbage container would be sufficient for most households. You bring up the question that my next door neighbors have 2 children. They're very good at recycling, but they still end up with 2 garbage bins. And there would be probably, maybe disrespectful, another resource income by having that second one where you'd have to have a tank system.
I think the other opportunity is that going out for a request for proposal, that would be all-inclusive, that the CUPE will be asked to tender as well as private enterprise. If a high percentage of the community is only using 1 garbage can, one pickup, we're tendering out for 2, we're going to be paying for a lot of the service that we're not going to be using. So it's just, I think everybody realizes that they're probably putting out a lot less garbage than they ever used to. And there's no point in us paying for a service that's not going to be used to its full extent. Councilor Brothers.
My question was really in that vein. Are we going to have any cost savings by doing this? And I think it was mentioned in the report that they don't know whether there's going to be any cost savings, but will there be a cost savings?
Well, the tender process is going to identify that, right, and it'll be immediate. The other unknown in this whole picture of garbage pickup is what is going to be in the waste stream, and if the city is mandated by the province to eliminate food waste out of the garbage stream, that'll be again another, I think, Penny, it's like 32 or 35% of the garbage they're saying is food waste?
36, actually.
36.
Yeah, pretty close.
So again, we could see the amount of curbside garbage pickup being even reduced more if that is mandated on us. Councillor English, had your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make a note that there is the opportunity to purchase, if this is the way that it is, a tag where you can get rid of more than 1 bag at a time, should you need to get rid of more than 1 can of garbage. You'll still be able to throw out 2 cans if that's what you need to do. You need a tag for the second.
Any comments, Penny, Darren, that you'd like to throw in on this while we're here? Did we miss anything?
I guess I would just add that the 2009 solid waste management plan, looking at that time, looking at bringing recycling in, did recommend that the city move to 1 garbage can. And at that time, Salmon Arm, also one of the member municipalities of the CSRD, was implementing garbage collection for the first time. And they did implement it with 1 can pickup and with the option to purchase tags. And that has been successful in Salmon Arm.
Very good. Councillor Lando, then Councillor Souls.
Worship, I did have an opportunity to talk with Ms. Paige Britton this week about this, and I think there's a real opportunity to see when the response to this comes back, if we can provide a service for cheaper. I did learn from reading this report that we do have a 10 existing branch for bags, and we're unaware of that, so there are options for people, but the way I see the future going is, food recycling, more recycling. If you have an incentive to reduce your waste, maybe someone who's not recycling will convert to recycling. I think there's money savings here, and I think that for the environment, it's obvious that we need to be moving in this direction. So I'm happy to support this and see what comes back.
Councillor Sauce.
Your Worship, just for clarification, my question to Mr. Kolanowski, Ms. Paige Britton. If we have more than one garbage bag in that 77-liter garbage can, will that still be picked up as one unit or considered more than one unit?
Through your Worship, yeah. If it's within the confines of that 177-liter, that is considered one can and one pickup.
Great, thank you.
Just to follow up on all of this, I think that, if we have an idea that we should encourage recycling, I think this is a prime opportunity to do so. And I agree with Councillor Orlando. I think that it's only if you make those requirements that people will start to be creative about how we recycle and make sure that we don't have as much garbage as we have. If you keep it at 2, people will just say, well, I'll use what I have. So I think it's a good idea that way.
I think this is the way to go. One can, I think, is going to be the future. And even if you miss garbage day, you can still cram a lot in. You can get in there. You can really, it's still one pickup though, right?
As long as the lid closes, Your Worship.
That's right. That's right. Any more questions or comments on this? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thomas Brook. Carrie, you want to do that?
Sure. I make a motion that the staff be directed to seek grant funding in the provincial infrastructure planning grant program to cover part of the cost of undertaking the preliminary study. And that staff commence the preliminary study in accordance with the utility acquisition policy of costs and concerns with inclusion of the Thomas Brook users into the city boundaries and water system.
Motion by Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Brothers.
Question, the $40,000 we're paying for the study, is that encompassing part of it, is paid for by the grant, is going to this, or is that coming out of our pocket?
Your Worship, my understanding is that that's initially being funded by the city, but once an OSA is set up for Thomas Brook, that will be included in the cost recovery for that OSA.
Okay, so I'm just following up on that. So if Thomas Brook decides that they don't want to go through with that, that's just an investment that we've made and that's it.
Part of our good neighbor policy. And I think it's worthwhile to talk about the process that we're going to be going through. Is we're going to be doing this study and costing. And right now, the residents have voted amongst themselves, and the vast majority of them have agreed to join the city. We would look at we're applying for a grant. We're estimating that the full meal deal, which would be full water system, hydrants, and sewer, would be in around the $1 million range. Of course, that price would be paid for by the Thomas Brook water users. That would be whatever the grant will pay for, that the water users would be paying. It would be a separate utility, just like we have a big water utility, we have the City of Revelstoke utility. The Thomas Brook would be its own separate utility, and only those residents and users would be paying for that system. Is that in a nutshell?
I think it depends, Your Worship, whether they're actually moving into the city or not. So that would be another.
Once all the information is gathered, then the residents would actually vote. And whether to accept so the residents still have the final say, but the bottom line is that we're going to do all the studies, get it all costed. Those residents, just like the Big Eddy water system, they're going to have that information, they're going to vote on it, they'll be taken into the city, and then they'll have a separate water utility separate from the City of Revelstoke water utility. Councillor Nixon.
Just that this is a good news story and a good step, and kudos to the residents that took leadership up there to come up with a survey.
That's exactly right. Thank you for saying. Councillor Lando.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Nixon. I was able to attend most of the meeting that we had here. I know the mayor was there. It was, I believe, a CSRD meeting where everyone came together to go out on the same page with all the details, and people are getting organized, and it's a health issue, and I think we're moving in the right direction with this. So.
Any more comments or questions from council? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving into correspondence, any comments on the item A, North Columbia Environmental Letter? Yes.
Is that gone to the environmental committee? Yes. It has? Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Duke.
I guess because we did bring this to the environmental committee. In the next committee meeting that we're having, we're having BC Hydro come and speak to us about it.
I'm just thinking that we should be, has this hasn't gone through staff or any comments or reports or any, I think it would be worthwhile to send it back to staff to have them look at it and see what, if there's any implications for the city. This is not the city of Revelstoke boundaries, but we are being asked to support this. So I'd like to have a motion that is sent back to staff. Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Brothers. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Reynolds?
Yeah, I agree. That's the right step. There's jurisdiction issues. We're being reminded we have past commitments, and we need to know where we stand on this. So I think that's what we're debating.
But I think it's also worthwhile to say that, ever since Revelstoke was here, this was the farmland, this was the land base, this was the recreation area. So, and I think that a lot of people still look at it as their backyard and their backcountry recreation. So I think we have to be mindful of that as well. It's a traditional area.
And that's what I wanted to follow up on, because I just don't know what this area is all about, and my natural inclination is to say, well, why are we allowing this to happen? But as Councillor Orlando said, it's a jurisdictional issue, and the history has to be known about what this property has been used for, and so we have to tread very lightly and know what we're talking about before we come down and make some recommendations and decisions to that type of thing. So I'm in favor of that.
Just keeping in mind that it's not in our jurisdiction. Yes. Mr. Mason, you have your hand up in the back.
Yes, I did. So several years ago, the city participated in a Upper Arrow Lake Drawdown Zone Management Plan. A plan was developed with all the stakeholders. There was lots of community consultation, and the area is managed by BC Hydro and by the ministry, whatever it's called now, Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations. So when this matter came to the Environmental Committee, there was discussion, and what essentially is happening down there is that the clauses in the plan are not being enforced. And so what the committee decided to do was invite BC Hydro and ministry representatives to the next environmental committee meeting to ask them, and the CSRD will also participate because they're a stakeholder, to find out why in fact the management plan that exists is not being enforced, because the activities that you see in that picture are not supposed to happen down there. And simply what's happened is nobody's been enforcing the plan, and so the activities have proliferated. So we will be getting a report, I think, back from the Environmental Committee, probably with some recommendations to Council following the next meeting.
And I think it's safe to say that that's not a everyday occurrence. It's an isolated incident that happened, and it was unfortunate, but it did happen. Councillor Nixon. Oh, sorry, Councillor Saltz had his hand before you. Sorry.
Your Worship, just for clarification, the area that we're talking about is south of the airport, right down to Arrowhead. Is that what we're talking about as far as
basically?
So just for enforcing and watching this area, does that fall under the mandate of our conservation officers that we don't have? Does that fall under their mandate?
I'm not sure.
No,
I've never actually talked to a conservation officer that worked here. Mr. Mason, do you have an answer for that?
No, I mean, we've been through the enforcement piece before. There's a number of agencies involved in enforcement down there. It depends what the infraction is. Could be the conservation officer, it could be the RCMP, the ministry, yeah. So it depends. BC Hydro have an enforcement office as well.
Councillor Duke.
Through the chair, thank you. The conservation officer was down there last time I was down there from Golden. He came out and he was speaking to everybody down there. So they do very mild enforcement, I'd say. I can't imagine going out there all that often.
The motion is to refer this back to staff. Councillor Brothers.
Just a question, whose jurisdiction is it? Like who?
CSRD, BC Hydro, province.
Yeah.
So it's all combined?
Everybody but the city.
Well, that's not quite true. The city does have a small piece of land down there, just on the other side of the bridge, which is in the drawdown zone, and there's some private land down there too.
All right. Do you have your hand up? Okay. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item B, request to waive traffic impact contribution for 1872 Trans-Canada Highway. This is the Petro Canada. You want to take any action on this?
Questions?
Yes, whatever you want.
I think the 167, through the chair, $167,000 figure, how do we arrive at that number? Where did it come from?
Your Worship, there was a report done in 2013 for the intersection on how that breakdown of contribution would be allocated. That table was prepared by a company called Boulevard. They did a traffic study, doing the analyticals on where cars would be going, where they wouldn't be going, and how that breakdown of development would occur. That applied to the Big Bend properties as well. So it was done as a result of those potential developments as well as this particular site. And the catalyst for it at the time was the expansion to the McDonald's, which paid the first piece of that contribution towards the intersection. So the contributions break down to each property as well as the municipality and the province.
Can we see that?
Certainly.
Can we get a copy of that? Just because I'd like to, if somebody asks, I'd like to understand that it's not just Mr. Joe Howell who is being required to pay this, that it is a group thing. I just want to have some understanding of that.
Yes, through the chair, Your Worship. The contributions would include any further expansion of the McDonald's site, as well as any future expansion of the A&W, any of the works that would take place that would expand the Shell station or the Tim Hortons, as well as new development in and around the intersection. The biggest contributor would be the properties, Big Bend properties. That's where the land share of the contribution would come from.
The only thing, if I can weigh in, I mean, if everyone has to pay for it, and it's a benefit to those local areas, then I'm prepared to support it. But what I would like to see, and I understand that some suggestion has been made to Mr. Joe Hall that it can be paid over time, and I think that's probably where we should go with this, is suggest to him that it should be over a time period, and be it 5 years, be it 8 years, be it 10 years, whatever. Because it's a big chunk of money, and my concern is I don't want to discourage other developers because it is a big chunk of money, a lot of money that they have to outlay, not only for the development of the property itself, but then for this as well. So,
Your Worship.
Yes, Mr. Strachan.
As is noted in Mr. Joel's letter, the city did recognize that this is a large sum of money payable at building permit. So through the finance department and the city engineer, we did bring forward a proposal to Mr. Joe Hall to break it apart into 5 payments over the next 5 years to be payable on his taxes. So that has been already put in place and it is available should Mr. Joe Hall choose to use that option to reduce it to 5 increment payments starting next year.
could we expand it beyond 5? I just want to know the options there.
Your worship, I think we're using current bylaw ability to extend it to 5 years as it is right now. I have to double check that, but there's nothing that I can recall that extends it beyond 5 years.
Mr. Sills.
Your worship, just again for clarification, Mr. Strachan has the other people in that community, other than McDonald's, have they paid their portion or have paid their portion? The Tim Hortons, the Shell, sort of thing.
Your worship, at this point, no further development has triggered it. Future development will trigger their contribution in the future.
Thank you.
I think that all of council recognizes and the community recognizes that this area is a huge problem traffic-wise, and it gets down to, it's similar to a development cost charge fee, is that when development is coming in, it's creating a strain on infrastructure. That's the development that should be paying for that infrastructure. So as we add more development into this area, it's going to add more traffic, there's going to be parking issues, and the businesses that are going in and creating the extra strain on the infrastructure have to participate in, and not unlike development cost charge for water or for sewer. And I guess I'm always concerned is, when does the developer know that this is going to be a requirement? And looking at past correspondence, this has come up time after time and year after year that this charge would be there, so it shouldn't have been a surprise. And I think that the city has been upfront and forthright on the size that this charge would be, because fixing the problem is not going to be a cheap problem to fix. And so the other part of the letter is talking about taxes. And this council and the previous council has made a concerted effort to reduce the amount of Class 6 taxation, the business classification, and I can see that hopefully continuing in the future, and again, trying to take a little bit of the burden off of the business community. But I think that the city has been upfront and transparent on what the cost would be for this development. And as much as I like helping the business community expand, I can't see supporting what the developer is looking for. Councilor Brothers.
Given that the people who are already there haven't paid this amount, and that's my understanding, they haven't paid it?
No, McDonald's has paid it.
McDonald's, but has A&W paid it?
No.
Okay, so can we defer this until we have a chance to see that report, and then bring this letter back? I just want to make sure that what we're doing is fair to all, and as I said, I don't want to discourage development.
There's no motion on the floor. You can do whatever you would like if it gets supported and voted by council.
All right, I'd like to bring a motion to defer this to the next council date, and in the interim to receive a copy of the report Mr. Strachan has just referred to, the 2013 report, and then we'll talk about this letter again.
Maybe it would be appropriate to send it back to planning committee. Could be sent back, should be sent somewhere.
So the motion could go back to staff for a report on the intersection of the contributions of council officials.
Okay with that?
I'd be fine with that.
Are you okay with that? I need a seconder for that motion. Councillor Sills. Motion's on the floor to send it back to staff and planning for a report back. Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, I generally echo the statements you made earlier. It seems to me that there is paperwork that goes back several years indicating that this is going to be a requirement. I do recall that McDonald's was required to pay, but I will support it if it's a matter of 2 weeks and it's not going to hold anyone up, getting some more information, because that was my question. Maybe it is just for council's information on how it all works, how it's going to work, and it's a complex thing, the fixing the intersection, and where the money goes and how the formula is out there, it might be a good information piece. However, in general, I think, I do support staff, and it seems like this is the way we're going, but you could talk more information.
Councillor English.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to ask Mr. Strachan for a little bit of clarification, a comment right before you made your motion, Connie. So A&W hasn't paid because they haven't renovated, is that why? If they're going to renovate the restaurant, they would be looking at these charges as well, is that correct?
Your Worship, any expansion or building permit that would exceed $100,000 in value would trigger offsite works, which would trigger the contribution. It's a contribution according to the scale of the development itself. So it really depends on what's being proposed for the site. A new coat of paint doesn't do it. A change in the drive-through doesn't do it. If they are to rebuild the building and put a new building on, such as McDonald's, then it would trigger contribution.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, motion's on the floor. Is there any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Where are we? Public Works Committee minutes. Anybody have anything they want to bring up there? Social Development Committee minutes, February 25th. Economic Development Commission of March 4th. Economic Development Standing Committee minutes of March 4th and April 22nd. Development Services Committee. Revelstoke Community Housing Society of April 13th. Golf Club Task Force minutes of April 21st. Business License Summary. BC Water and Wastewater Association, I'm assuming that's what that means. And the response to Canadian Pacific letter to Norm MacDonald, we're CC'd on. Questions for media?
Well, Your Worship, I have one question is with regards to the public nuisance bylaw. What kind of fine would be levied on the miscreants nailed for doing things like peeing in public?
You, Councillor English.
Didn't answer that, thank you, Your Worship. $500.
Okay, that makes for an expensive hotel bill. That does. Okay, thank you.
Expensive beer. Any other media questions?
I do have a question. Do we know how many people put out 2 cans of garbage?
Sorry, do we know how?
Like how many people are putting out two bags or 2 cans of garbage? Is that been tracking on?
That's a tricky thing. I tried to determine that statistically by driving around. And I found that I would think that there was nobody putting out garbage, and then somebody would show up behind me, or there were people putting out garbage based on when they knew the garbage collectors were coming exactly. So I found it challenging, but in my general count, more than half, the majority were putting out a single can of garbage.
If I put out a second can, I wait till Penny leaves for work and then I put it out after she's gone by. But that doesn't happen very often.
I have another question about the TILMA thing.
Yes.
I must have been quite idle at work for a little bit, because I actually did look at the TILMA Act, and from what I can tell, it seems like there's a provision in there that you can have local preferences for purchases under a certain amount. So I'm wondering why take out the entire local preference and not just use the guidelines in TILMA?
Much for that?
Your Worship, that's just a general guideline. Going back to our discussion earlier, the Council's discussion earlier, we do our best in the purchasing to make sure that we try and purchase from local suppliers. The unfortunate thing is that there's not a lot of suppliers in town with what we need. So we certainly do want to follow the spirit of what's intended there, and looking at our local suppliers and making sure that they get a good ability to bid on the work that we do. We do spend quite a lot of receive budget from local suppliers, so we give them actual preferential treatment. I'm not exactly sure what that means. But I think we have to be
I think from my.
Sorry, I missed, could you speak up a little, Graham? I missed what you just said there at the end.
So I think we just have to be a little careful about the preferential treatment we do provide and make sure that we're not going too foul of the regulations that we set. So I'm not quite sure what preferential treatment necessarily.
I think what we have to be careful of, Alex, is that if outside suppliers feel that we have a preferential treatment to the tune of the price tag, then we're going to find that competitive bids may not come in at all. And I think that we want to encourage all people to bid so that we can provide the best goods and services at the best price for the taxpayer. And I think that the number one thing that the local business community wants is they want to make sure that they're included and asked to bid when it's appropriate. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the only preferential treatment that the local businesses should get. They should be able to, they should be ensured that they are included in the bid process. And I think that the business community is sharp enough and their pencils are sharp enough that they can do a good job, they can provide goods and services to the community at a very competitive price. And we would prefer to deal with all local suppliers, but they also have to come to the table and give the best deal for the taxpayers.
Good.
So that's a good comment, and I'd just like to go on from that. In the policy, I think it says, it talks about best value. So that's what staff in charge are doing, is ensuring that when we're going out and we're purchasing, we're getting the best value for the city within our budget. So the best value might well mean sourcing that from a local supplier for a variety of different reasons. It might not necessarily be the best price, but it might be for other reasons. For example, the local access to that product or labor that's necessary. So all those various things will impact the decision-making process and who and where we source our product and services from.
Mr. Rooney?
I have a question with regards to that. Does that include sourcing goods and services outside of the country?
Well, Tilma only refers to...
No, I understand Tilma only refers to, but we have in the past purchased services from outside of Canada. Does that include that?
Well, we're not prevented from sourcing things from outside the country. It goes back to what we're saying here. We're talking about best value for the taxpayers of this community.
I guess I'd have to have a for instance.
Well,
I didn't see anything in China that we really should have to have.
The city's website was built by a company outside of Canada. It was built down in the United States. You know, there were businesses here that could have used the business.
I'm not sure if Ed Stott had any comments on that because I was not here.
No, I understand that.
So, Your Worship, that project was tendered out. There were specific requirements that we required for the city's website. It went through a competitive process, and there was not a local supplier of that service that met the requirements that we needed for that process.
Okay.
Did you have a question? No. Okay, anybody else? Okay. I'm looking for a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 9.1C.